Hey there, welcome to episode 24 of the FFS Talk audio program. I am your host, Dan Hugo. Today we are recording in the morning of Thursday, May 9, 2024. If you are not familiar with what FFS Talk, or specifically what FFS means, you need to hang out with more Irish people. This is a program about what works, what doesn't, and what we can do about it. Today's topic, the title, in fact, College or Other, and Continuous Learning. I don't want it to be all about college. I went to college. My views are colored by this, but especially in today's day and age, there are options that are not necessarily college. The goal should not be about degree. It should be about learning. There are, of course, several jobs that require a certain level of learning, a certain degree, a certain measurable amount of education, requirements, certifications, licenses, etc. So it's a big bowl of spaghetti, as I will say later. But there are so many interesting and unusual noodles. So let's get to it, college or other, and continuous learning on this, the 9th of May, 2024. As usual, if you have found this episode somewhere that shows episode description content, you'll find the show notes and the links. I'll flip through the summary real quick. The news today is awash with strife at our college campuses. Surely a sign of the end times, so long as we believe that a vanishingly small population of students are worldwide enough to represent their generation. In the meantime, where does college and higher learning fit into the near term? And I cannot stress enough the availability heuristic, which I have a link to if you're not familiar with it, may lead you to believe that all colleges are awful and they are where people go to learn how to be protesters and so on. But just keep in mind the scale of the sum total of all protesters nowadays. It's not something I really want to get into too much, so we'll wrap it up right at the beginning. But it's a very small number, and protesters are not evil people. They may be new. Maybe they aren't the best informed, but you know how you learn? Sometimes you learn by putting your hand on a very hot barbecue and learning that you should not do that. Does it make you a bad person? No. It does make you smarter later. The links. Let's start off with the usual self-promotion. Shameless indeed. buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo. It is a profile page I use to link my various shows together. It's sort of like a link tree or similar. I have one of those too, bio.link. The Buy Me a Coffee profile page is interesting because it's more of a free form. The editor is not great and the layout that I have is not wonderful, but it allows me to describe things and to fill in links and other, so it's reasonably flexible and it's separate from all of my various web properties, which are years and years behind schedule in all aspects. So it's a place where I can just throw some links up, and when the links do change, I can update them there, regardless of which website is up or down or in some state of flux. You are not obligated to do this, but of course, if you would like to support my various projects, they are all powered by coffee. I have even placed a few links to specific coffee beans that I purchase, that I use. I grind them, brew them, and drink the results. Frequently, the fuel that powers all of these things. So you are welcome to, but under no obligation to, actually, literally, buy me a coffee. Similarly, the Ko-fi.com Dan Hugo profile, ko-fi.com/Dan Hugo. When the new websites launch, I think I've talked about this for about 3 years now. Now, when they launch as part of a larger, these are going to be sort of test cases for I know I'm putting off the obvious, but these are going to be test cases for the sort of content creator aggregation Notion that will be part of the In Las Vegas project, which is based on the My Muni project of the Innovator Vegas Foundation, of which I am the managing director. So all these moving parts, I have made this big complicated thing because I went to college. So there, check those out. Now on with the show links specifically for this episode. I didn't know there was this. I think I did know actually, but haven't looked into this stuff in a while. There's a wealth of information, statistics, and analyses of at the National Student Clearinghouse Research Center. So I've linked to their main page. You can see current enrollment stats broken down by private and public, and 4-year, 2-year, etc. For the current year, you can see completion rates. You can see various. So there's tons and tons of data there. So my show today, my episode is not about diving into that data. The data is there. It is a starting point. I don't know that they are completely authoritative, but they have references to the actual data they've captured and their analysis. So that's a good start. The number of students enrolled this term in private institutions is slightly up. The number in public institutions is slightly down. Total enrollment across the United States is slightly down from last year, and I think the year before, where it was up in previous years. So there's certainly more reading to do and more investigation. If you are of age to consider going to college, and by the way, that could be any age. You can go to college whenever you want. Check it out. See what the landscape is like from their viewpoint, and from others. You should definitely look around, and that's part of what we'll talk about today. The U.S. government is going skills-based in their hiring. There's a NextGov article from April, towards the end of April. Goodbye degree requirements. The Biden administration is pushing skills-based hiring for tech talent. Now, it's probably reasonable to not require a degree for like administrative roles, or maybe, I don't know, our government is the largest, I think it's the largest employer in the world, but it's certainly a big entity with many job roles in different organizations within different departments and functional units and so on. So I have no idea how far-reaching this will end up being, but if it's relaxing or removing technical skills jobs, if they're removing the requirement that there's a college degree, I think this could go one of two ways. One, you're going to get people who receive specialty training, especially retired military or separated military. They did their commitment. They received their training for their particular production by a road. They did their training for a particular, I don't know what it's called now. It used to be MOS. So whatever they were trained to do, maybe they learned something about cybersecurity or system architecture or hardware systems design, radio, especially radio is very important. Communications, field communications, etc. There's a whole bevy of technical areas that you can learn a tremendous amount about, very practical, in the military or via vocational programs that don't necessarily benefit from having a college degree. So if they are becoming a little bit more realistic, and I'll get into this later, really it comes down to how job descriptions or job recs, job requirements, are composed. I'll just, spoiler alert, people who write those don't always know exactly what the job is. So they look at the person that had the job before and they say, okay, that's what we need. It could be that simple, and it could be that simply wrong, incorrect. You must have a PhD to operate this. No, probably not true. Sometimes true, but probably not. There's a rather famous, well-known, or maybe just to me, Mark Twain quote. I've linked to the AZ Quotes website, and I think you'll see other Mark Twain quotes about education. You'll see it paraphrased, and it comes in various forms, but essentially it's don't let your classes get in the way of or interrupt or otherwise distract you from your education. The point being, you will learn a lot more outside of school than inside. And this is always true. This is true from the get-go, except for the fact that some basic skills like reading and arithmetic are probably best learned early on, so they become second nature. But really, everything you learn in school is probably about yesterday instead of tomorrow. But as George Santayana has been known to say or write, those who do not remember the past are condemned to repeat it. I didn't include that link here. I've referenced George Santayana many times. The quote is often given out of context. In context, it's slightly different, but it's a good line anyway. So, don't discount the past, or you'll get to get a do-over, which is not always good. So don't let your classes get in the way of your education. I actually used that quote during my orientation week, my freshman year of college, Harvey-Mudd College. I was not attending the orientation presentation of some sort, whatever it was. And someone in the administration said, "Hey," and our class was 151 people. So "Hey Dan, how come you're not at the thing?" I said, "Well, you know what Mark Twain said." So it was more important to me to conduct other activities at that time, and that was fine. Classes are important, but not as important as everything else. The availability heuristic bias. This will come up throughout your life. Something you may learn about in college or from Wikipedia. I'm going to say that learning about it practically in an educational setting rather than reading the web page at the Wikipedia. Wikimedia is software, or the company, Wikimedia. Reading this page is fine, but so your mileage may vary. But essentially, the example always given, because the news, especially now in modern times, the news will cover a rare event more than usual, more than it covers other things. So a plane crash where everyone is fine, the infamous landing on the Hudson, that was, help me out here, Tom Hanks played him. It was Captain Sully Sullenberger. He piloted the aircraft. Both engines were lost to bird strikes. And he had to make a quick decision to ditch the aircraft, as it were, on the Hudson River. And very few injuries, all survived, all hands, all souls on board accounted for. And it turned out not so bad. So that received a tremendous amount of coverage. And, anytime a plane goes down, it gets a huge amount of coverage. And the problem is, some might believe, the last thing I heard about flying was a plane landed on the Hudson River and how it was impossible. There's something like, and this is just a round number that I read recently when it comes to what are they called? Sky marshals. Yeah. So there are something like, and I think this data is about 2 years old. There's something like 2,000 sky marshals, and there are 30,000 flights per day. So why do you not see sky marshals? Sky marshals on every flight. A slight disparity. So 30,000 flights per day, and nothing happens. But when a door falls off, which is obviously bad, I'm not trying to diminish that. A door falls off, a panel falls off, a flight needs to return because of an issue or problem. That gets a lot of attention, and suddenly flying is frightening and scary and so on. Now, that doesn't mean that things like the 737 MAX with the MCAS system is not something to definitely be concerned about, and Boeing should absolutely be raked over the coals and worse, and that's a specific thing. But 30,000 flights per day, and if one airplane landing on the Hudson River is enough to sway opinion about flying, when there are 29,999 that day that did not do anything, they just reached their destination, probably late. The availability heuristic will make that one case stand out in your mind, and when you present an argument, or you consider a situation, that one will weigh more heavily than the 29,999 other from that particular day. And just remember, every day that follows, when you don't hear anything in the news, there's still 30,000 every day. So by the end of the week, 5 days later, if you're still thinking, man, I don't want to fly anymore because we might end up ditching in a river. Well, that would be 150,000 airplanes have flown that week in those 5 days, right? 5 times 30,000. And 1 out of 150,000 landed on the Hudson River during that 5-day period. So it's very easy to make certain news stories or certain anecdotes or certain personal experiences more important considered on their own, because those are the ones you hear about, rather than considering them as part of the larger picture. So if you visit the National Student Clearinghouse website, for example, and get some enrollment numbers and trends and public versus private and 4-year, 2-year completion rates, that's graduation, et cetera, then you listen to some individual anecdotes about, well, I didn't go to college. Hopefully you'll be able to kind of put things into perspective so you don't succumb to the availability heuristic bias. You may decide, I'm going to refer to this later, but Bill Gates didn't go to college. Look how he turned out. Well, you're probably not Bill Gates. Look at the many thousands of people from his, was he at Harvard? I can't remember. Just in the region where his high school class that went on to college, and then the people that were at those colleges. So you can sort of work backwards from Bill Gates not going to college or not finishing college. See all of the other people that were following his basic trajectory who did not end up where he did. So yeah, something to think about. Availability heuristic bias happens all the time. So let's get into let's get the protest topic off the table, so to speak. So media coverage of various institutions, many well-known, Columbia, Harvard. Harvard had some other issues. There's just been a piling of, not piling on necessarily, a piling up of various questionable circumstances about college presidents, policies on protesting and freedom of speech issues. And I don't want to get into what freedom of speech and First Amendment protections really are. That's something for a constitutional scholar who probably went to Harvard or something. But media coverage of various institutions, well known, might indicate that college is finally crumbling. The end of days are here. They don't go to college. But you're only speaking about hundreds of students, maybe at one campus, hundreds here, hundreds there, maybe not even 100 over here. So these are small groups of students. It might even be 1,000, depending on where you are, what time of day, who's decided, this is not going anywhere. I got to get some homework done. These are the tiniest fractions of college students total, right? You can see the stats, the number of college students versus the number of college students involved in protests. But they're getting on the news, and the news likes to report things that are unusual, and it will spend a great deal of time reporting them. So there you go. I'm not discounting the protests, but I am asking that we all put this into perspective. Just like the college is the worst, college is failing. There are cases of that, but big picture. College is a time and environment for learning. But remember, when you go to college, you were just in high school. And I don't know about you, but college, based on high school is not the best years of your life. They might be up until that point. The reason that people think high school is the best years of their life is because they've only been at high school. Wait till the next couple of years come around, then you'll be like, oh man, high school kind of sucked. It wasn't all bad, but high school is not the best years of your life. So you're basing you've just arrived at college. And fun fact, a lot of people that were seniors in high school, they get all the senior accolades. When they go to college, they're freshmen, frosh, first year students, whatever the common terms are. So they get to start over. And for some people, that's a little strange. Your mileage may vary there as well. So it's it's a time for learning without experience. You are going to learn things you did not learn in high school sometimes, and you're going to start learning some things about people and events and deeper dives on an individual instruction basis, right? You may be, in a recitation style class with 5 other people, or you may be in a lecture hall with 500 people. But you will have a variety of different ways of being exposed to opinion. Some of the opinions will be heavily leaning in one direction or the other. There's a lot of talk about how most college professors are now left-leaning with an agenda, and that may be true. That's probably more true in the liberal arts area, but it's been a long time since I was in college, so your mileage may vary yet more. So protests in this context are often ill-informed. There's an entire worldview that many people have constructed for themselves or with their peers or based on research or lived experience. A lot of people who are protesting today in the college age range, especially here in America, they're learning. They're going to learn a lot more about everything that they're protesting. And they may even look back a year, 10 years, 100 years from now and say, ooh, did I get that wrong? Or, hey, I was right. The protests famously from the Vietnam War era were arguably, they were a little bit messy, but ultimately probably on the right side of history. Not something we'll talk about too much today. So history will reveal various lessons learned, especially by the protesters. If we recall that many college protesters were just experiencing their senior prom, like I said, they were literally, what is it? So a year ago, they may have been going to prom or getting ready for graduation. And now they're concerned about global geopolitics and nation states, thousands of years of strife that will not be solved by skipping class. So 1 to 4 years prior, they knew nothing. And guess what? They still know very little, if not nothing. We can watch the learning process as though we are watching the first creatures leaving the sea to live on land. These are the beginning time. Well, you could say it's the end of the beginning. They are now entering a time when they're free to learn. They're free to make mistakes about what they express and how. They may learn more They may learn more as a result of this protest, as a result of getting attention. I actually do hope, except for people who may engage in violence or maybe go over the top and say stupid things to hurt people, like especially intentionally. Unintentional, that's a little tricky, but people who have gone over the line in very obvious ways, not talking about them. But for the most part, 80, 90%, this is a practical learning. And as long as they learn, it would be wonderful if sometime during their college career, there's a reflection, there's a retrospective on what the protest accomplished and so on. I think that would be interesting. But that is the protest. They are a very tiny fraction of continuing education, the post K-12 options available. One of them is college. One of them is a well-known private college. One is a not so well-known public college. And the list goes on. And they don't even have to be colleges. They can be vocational schools, etc. So there are many options, many more options than there were 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, 100 years ago. So it's I myself went to college, so I will be looking through that lens. You may consider other options, of course, and you should consider them well. So why did I go to college? It was always a goal. For me personally, I always wanted to attend college. I initially wanted to be an Air Force pilot, so I really wanted to go to the Air Force Academy. It was just one of those things. You're like, that's what I want to do. And I was moving in that direction, and then my eyesight was going to, as my physical at Luke Air Force Base during my junior year of high school. The ophthalmologist had dilated my eyes, did the full thing, the full pilot eye exam. And he said to me, I'm going to write 20/20 on your physical report for today. And that's probably the last time that will ever happen. So something to think about if you were thinking about being a pilot. Now, of course, over the years, keratotomy surgeries, so the the cornea shaping surgeries for correction. Other surgical means have become acceptable. In my time, that was an impossibility. So I decided my other favorite thing, and it turns out, really, when I really think about it, I was day to day super interested in technology and computers and STEM, so math, science, education, math and science education. So enjoyed taking advanced math classes, which led to my college choice. Always liked physics and chemistry and biology. Was always answering, always raising the hand, always the annoying student in the class. But yeah, I enjoyed these things. And of course, in a high school curriculum, you very rarely are exposed to actual engineering, which is, of course, the application of all these pure sciences, sort of. So my thinking was always, I'll be an aeronautical engineer. When I go to the Air Force Academy, I'll learn exactly how aircraft work. I will fly them. Later, I will take part in designing them. So maybe I'd be at Lockheed or something. So that was like the plan A. Plan B, and by the way, I did accept a full ride Type 1 scholarship from the United States Air Force to attend Harvey Mudd, which I later, I didn't turn it down because I accepted it, but I gave it back for a variety of reasons. But it turned out, so as I'm getting into here, I was really much more interested in science and technology, engineering, and math than specifically committing to the Air Force program. And by the way, I also could have gotten out early because there was a reduction in force in the military, including the Air Force. So people that I went to school with who did participate in the AFROTC program, scholarship mostly, did not stay in the Air Force for the full term to go along with the scholarship. So, but these are details. So at the end of the day, it was becoming clear to me on getting to college that I was much more interested in the STEM part than the being aloft. Although I did do really well on the ASVAB, Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery Test, and the instructor from USC, the squadron there, of AFROTC squadron, was disappointed. He did express that I had gotten a particularly high score in all of their initial testing materials. So, that's fine. We had done enough of it in high school in the AFJ ROTC program, so it wasn't new to me. So maybe that was something. Although certainly AFJ ROTC is a pathway to AFROTC, so no surprise there. My high school guidance counselor, Alan Osborne, cannot imagine he's still around, but an interesting character. We had a parent-student planning session in his office, a normal thing for a freshman at Sunny Slope High School in Phoenix, Arizona. He said, you're going to be finishing our math program here before you graduate. You're ahead on math already. So you're probably interested in science and math and all this. So he said, have you considered MIT or Caltech or maybe Harvey Mudd College? And I had never heard of Harvey Mudd College. I think I'm going to suggest that the reason that he had that on the tip of his tongue was that one of my, I believe he was 2 years ahead of, in high school. One of my fellow Slopers, Sunny Slope High School graduates, Scotty, went to Harvey Mudd also from Sunny Slope. So I think he was the only other one up until that, I would go eventually. So I think he wasn't 4 years ahead. Was he still at Sunny Slope? No. How did that work out? Was he? No, he was 3 years ahead. 3 years ahead? So maybe he was a senior considering going, whatever it was. That must have been it. I think he was 3 years ahead. Yes. So 3 years ahead, going to Harvey Mudd College, or at least applying to it. I don't know if he probably not already accepted. Okay, so the point is, Mr. Osborne making that suggestion planted the seed, quite literally. What a weird name. And then, as it turns out, by my junior year, there was a person working in the admissions office at Harvey Mudd named Duncan Murdoch, and he had this fairly creative, fairly unusual recruiting program to get attention and to draw potential applicants in. so they might be considered, or they might consider. So I attended a Harvey Mudd recruiting outreach gathering in Phoenix, Arizona, where I was living. Met Mr. Murdoch, and it was a good time. And then I went on a tour of the campus with someone who I would know later, living in the same dorm, but Sunny. So we had a nice quick tour, and there are things I would do differently today, but essentially I applied for Harvey Mudd College. I was accepted. For me personally, college education, especially the not quite typical program offered at Harvey Mudd, at the time, I think it's changed quite a bit since, was good for me. It was a great fit, and it led to great adventures, working on things that have been interesting to me, greatly interesting to me. Some interesting times, and due in no small part to not only what I learned at Harvey Mudd College, but what I learned about learning at Harvey Mudd College, which is arguably more valuable. Now, if I knew then what I know now, especially since I visited the MIT campus several times working for Intel, I've encountered, of course, in your travels, you'll encounter people who have attended various institutions and whatnot. I think I would have put more consideration towards MIT, as it was I really only considered Harvey Mudd for a variety of reasons. Class size, very small school, near enough to Phoenix to be just out of range. So no daily, it was 354 miles, I think, driving from my parents' driveway to the curb behind my dorm where I was living. So just far enough to be slightly inconvenient to come and visit. But yeah, so Harvey Mudd was fine. I don't regret, but it would be interesting to go back in time and consider MIT, which I think would have been an interesting experience. Totally different, radically different, but probably would have, it would have been different. That's, no time machine yet, so I can leave it there. So why should you go to college? And by the way, this is, again, through my lens, college graduate, bachelor's degree, 4-year college, didn't go for a master's, didn't see the need. So arguably, my consideration of pursuing a master's degree, of continuing beyond college, you could take a similar argument and move it back to, okay, well, I finished high school. Why do I need to go to college? I finished college. Why do I need to go for a master's? So that is not lost on me, but let's do why should you go to college? I know for me, there was never any pressure to go, but it was always on my list of things I wanted to accomplish. So college is voluntary, mostly. Your mileage may vary. As I just said, I was not pressured to go or anything. It was always something I wanted to do. You may find yourself in a situation, there are some cultural or historical family pressures that can happen. You know, all of your siblings went to college, or your entire, you'll be the first one not to go to college in the entire history of the whatever, so there can be pressures like this. Unlike most K through 12 education in the U.S., this being voluntary, other than required by, your local state laws and whatnot, people who go to college are often there because they want to be. This is probably most true after the first semester or trimester or first year. So people who are there the second, third, especially the fourth, maybe beyond, those are people there because they want to be. And those are the kinds of people who benefit from a college education, the people who actually want to be there and who derive some sort of value, or they see how what they're getting now will be a part of what they are going to do in the future. So voluntary participation is a different experience than what you may have experienced in high school. It is critical, and only more so in recent years, to be familiar not with the name at the top, I want to go to Harvard, but the professors, the programs, the track record of graduates, and the job market. You can start at that clearinghouse website. Take a look at the numbers and drill down into your particular interest based on what you want to pursue. Don't go to the college with the name necessarily. Go to or consider places that align with your own educational goals, with curriculum, with faculty members who align with how you want to learn and so on. And of course, this is some work, but you are making a big investment. I think I don't have data for this at the moment, but I think buying a house is the single largest expenditure of most people in the United States. College loans might be up there in the top three. So if you're going to spend a lot of money on this, you should do some research. Talk to people at the school. Definitely try to talk to some graduates, some alum. Know what you are signing up for ahead of time, and know, especially if you're going to go into a political frying pan. Again, most liberal arts majors, most if you're going into history or anything that isn't STEM, and I'm making that line because of this. STEM is really going by the textbook. There are methods. There is science. There's a scientific method. There are mathematical equations. There's a whole process. Injection of politics surely happens, but you really can't get political about the equations for Maxwell's equations. Not political. Schrodinger's equation, not political. Whether string theory is correct, probably political. But you are going to learn a lot about it. You can balance an equation. You can see partial pressures driving equilibrium of a balanced chemical equation, right? Not political. But if you're going to investigate history, if you're going to investigate even art, if you're going to investigate a lot of the liberal arts areas that are more about humanity than the science that we all try to deal with, there's a lot of room for political opinion. There's a lot of room for skewing viewpoints and even content of curriculum and so on. So it's important to be aware of that going in if you are pursuing, depending on what you're pursuing. So being surprised when you get there is probably a bad sign. Probably want to talk to recent graduates about the state of affairs today in modern times, and then talk to graduates a few years out. Today, I'm 31 years out of, is that right? 24. Yeah. I'm 31 years out from Harvey Mudd College. It is drastically different. It is fundamentally similar, but drastically different. So if you talk to me, you're going to get what it was like post Harvey Mudd College. If you talk to somebody who graduated in 2023 or 2022, you're going to get what is it like being at Harvey Mudd College. So you try to do both. The potential for long-lasting connections with future networking and even business partners, colleagues, associates. It's not limited to college, of course. You can meet these people anywhere, and you should. There is something about college. It is absolutely not like the military in any way, except for this one thing, that you have that commonality of experience. So there will always be a sort of an alumni connection. Sometimes it is not properly encouraged or cultivated. This is a problem with Harvey Mudd College, actually. I'll tell this brief story after this. But you're going to meet, and this is something one of my professors said when we were walking on the USC, University of Southern California. We were walking on the campus. We were doing some summer research between junior and senior year on water tree formation in electrical transmission line, electrical, like super high current. Sometimes those are not insulated, but in the case where these very high current transmission lines they were insulated with polypropylene or similar, polyethylene maybe, polypropylene probably. I think it was polypropylene. So they were insulated, and cracks and fissures would form, water would get into them, water trees would form, and it would create water trees in the structure and so on. So we were at USC campus to use their scanning electron microscope. We were trying to gold sputter the water trees to work with with a scanning electron microscope. We were there to use their transmission electron microscope, TEM. So I had suggested at some point, hey, this is one variation on a why did I go to college story. We were looking at this gold sputtering technique, which a third person, Mara, was working on. Dave and I were working with Professor King on, I think, 1 day a week or something. So I had a couple of summer things going on, staying on campus. So Mara was gold sputtering after creating an initial fissure, and we were trying to get water trees to form by exposing this fissure to tremendous amounts of current. Now, was it current or voltage? I'm trying to remember my I squared R. Anyway, so we would the test setup, or the construction of the experiment to get to the test setup, was to use these porcelain crucibles with little, I think, platinum electrodes in them on either side of the plastic. It was, imagine a coffee can, if those are still around, the lid, very similar material. So put a crucible on either side with some water. I think we varied what the water was made up of, salinity and so on. And you just let it sit for a few days, and you'd hope to find water tree formation, and they would form, actually. So that part was fine. It was analyzing how and why, not that they did. They did show up. So the gold sputtering was difficult because gold dust was not easily getting into the water tree. So I said one day, by the way, this came to me because I took a 7th grade science class when I was in 3rd grade, because my elementary school was so lacking in any sort of notion of how to deal with anybody with any precocity or interest in anything. So I was in this junior high school level science class. Fine. And one of the things we did was photography, and we developed photographs in a darkroom in the lab, learning how photography works. Of course, silver nitrate. And of course, we all got it on our hands and whatnot, and the teacher, Mr. Bartholomew, I don't remember his first name, was like, oh, you're not going to get that off. So we went to the chemistry department and said, can we get some silver nitrate? So I had said, why don't we use silver nitrate in the water tree formation process? So as it's forming, there will be silver nitrate in the trees. And then we had it in the dark. We had the whole thing in a dark room. The porcelain, of course, was protecting it from light, but that's fine. At the end of the water tree formation process, 4 days or something, probably 4 days, probably 6 days. So that the 7th day, when Dave and I were working, we'd go and try to disassemble this thing, see if it worked. So then once you have the crucibles off, the water tree is formed, there is silver nitrate solution in it. You let the solution evaporate, and then you expose it to light, and you will end up with silver deposited in the water tree more uniformly than the gold dust was. So getting gold dust solid into the water tree was proving nearly impossible. Getting the liquid dissolved silver nitrate. So silver nitrate solution deposited in the water trees during formation, evaporate, silver deposited uniformly in the tree. Great. It worked great. That's why I'm published in an IEEE journal on insulation. Very exciting. So we went to USC this is a long way to get to this story, but it is one of the benefits of going to college. You do things like this and you learn about it. So while we were walking to the transmission electron microscope lab on campus, Professor King was saying, one of the nice things about a small school like Harvey Mudd is you basically know everyone in your class, and that will come in handy later. And I think it was the case that the person that was running the TEM at USC was a former classmate, or somehow Professor King and this person knew each other that far back. He said it's the network connections you make during this time that will be valuable to you later in whatever you're doing. So, and in fact, I have emailed with Dave. He's at Duke, a professor, and he was supposed to come on and do a podcast, but too complicated, too much getting permission from superiors and so on. So they said, forget it. But these things have worked out. So one of the things you get from attending a college or any sort of program where it's a voluntary education program from which you hope to derive value for your future, you're going to be in collaborative spaces, classrooms, etc., with like-minded people, and those are people that you will share these learning experiences with, which will be valuable later. That was a long way to get to that, but that is true. So the potential for those long-lasting connections should not be undervalued. This has worked for me. I have had frequent engagements with mudders over the years, although I will say that the mudders in Vegas are not down to meet up. They're not into like, hey, you want to do a mud meetup at a pinball museum? Nope, not interested. But why you should not go to college. So while education in the U.S. is a bit of a spaghetti bowl, like I said, there are more noodles in there than ever. So college is not the only option. There are obviously vocational schools are if you want to enter a particular field. And in fact, the interesting thing there is you can go probably more cost effectively attend different vocational schools and develop specific skills. One of the arguments people make about college is, I want to learn about this. I don't want to have to learn about history and philosophy. And, that depends on how you view a diverse, we'll say well-rounded, but a diverse education. And the value of that in what you plan to do versus a more specific, more pointed collection of topics to study without getting into philosophy or the connectedness of these various things. So the Harvey-Mudd program was 1/3 major, 1/3 core, 1/3 humanities, as they would say. I personally I think I had about 2 of the humanities classes that I think were kind of a waste. I had my concentration in economics, which is typical for engineering. But I took several philosophy classes. I took several, I took the required number plus the humanities. So econ, philosophy, psychology, social psych, which actually was quite useful. And the list goes on. So the core, biology, chemistry, physics, the things you think, when am I ever going to use this? But if you are thinking about what you learned, if you don't treat it as, I must be learning this now for a specific reason, but if you treat it as, these are things I should file away in my toolbox, in my thinking mind, they may come in handy. And I have to say, this has never not been the case in all of my travels. There is almost always something to say, oh yeah, I learned that from Dr. Pervez, or I learned that from Dr. Caruxtis, etc. College costs in general. Oh, by the way, focus training programs are good. Associate degrees. I've said this previously in one of my programs. There was a push in the Phoenix area where I lived for many years when I went to high school, in fact. We are going to add biotechnologies, genetics, Genentech, and was it Genentech and TGen, translational genomics? I think that's so that was, they were going to start pushing this in like 2005, and 20 years later, Phoenix is a force to be reckoned with in this area. So they immediately added associate degree programs at the community college, Maricopa County Community College sites. There were multiple schools. Oh, we should add a lab technician and other specific vocations that will align with the research facilities and the goals and so on. So they did. So you don't have to go to a medical school, you don't have to get a PhD, but you can be involved in this area if it interests you and become a lab technician. You can become with the wet sciences, you can become a technician that works on apparatus and so on. So there were all kinds of adjacent fields that they could add to their collection of educational pathways, curricula, which they did. So good for them. However, self-taught program, self-teaching is, I think, something for later. I teach myself stuff all the time because I learned how to learn 30 years ago. I think someone who's 18 who tries to teach themselves is going to learn some things, but they're not going to know what they didn't learn until they find out later. And they will find that out from people around them. I've had some reasonably positive and profoundly negative experiences around people who I taught myself. Okay. I frequently say, half seriously, I don't mind self-taught people. I do mind their teachers. College costs in general are ridiculous. They're fueled in no small part by student loan programs that enable tuitions to explode. If you have students entering with a guaranteed student loan without any sort of feedback loop to say like, wait, why is your tuition going up year over year like 10% or 20%? It's huge. If that's just allowed, and because there's this the opaque notion that like, well, college is good. Right, but why does it cost so much more money? There should be endowment, especially private schools. Private schools that receive guaranteed student loans for tuition really can just start upping their tuitions all they want. There's really no, they're not a state school. They're not a part of a board of regents or some other oversight. So they're just, they're like a little independent island of endowment and other cash grabs and so on. So Harvey Mudd became more and more expensive all the time. It's something to think about. For me at the time, the education and the cost and everything all kind of worked out, even though I did drop the scholarship. Today, again, knowing what I know now, I don't think I would go to Harvey Mudd College based on the cost. And I haven't looked at it recently, but it's gone up. It's gone up quite a bit. And on some other things, which I will describe after this next bullet item. So it's arguably the main reason college is losing favor is because it's super expensive, even if you get a guaranteed student loan. So you would think, oh, great, deferred interest payments and so on, or Stafford and what's the other one? Pell Grant and Stafford loans and all this other various. There's probably more now. Those are all wonderful until you can't get a job to pay off your loans, and then you can still do a hardship deferment and all this. But those interest payments are accruing. The interest is accruing, and it can be quite a bit to take on. Now, if you did not do your research ahead of time, and you have attended Harvard or whatever, I got to go here because my friend went there, or whatever your reasons were, you are looking at the name on the door, not what outcomes were possible, how it fit into what you want to do, what you're capable of doing, etc. You didn't talk to any of the students. You didn't talk to recent and more experienced graduates. So you, without knowing much, and at the age of 18, right, the very same people who are out protesting, that same age group, that same level of world experience, said, I'm going to take on a substantial amount of debt, almost like buying a house, maybe sometimes more, depending on where, depending on a few things. So you're going to sign up for a huge amount of debt, and your parents might be like, yeah, this is what you want to do. Sometimes parents have the resources to take out a loan on their home. Sometimes they have the cash. Everybody's situation is different. It's still a lot of money. And when things don't go to plan, of course, the first thing to say is, I should not have spent that money on college, which is maybe true. But that doesn't make college a bad investment. It makes your investment in college not a great one. So college is losing favor partially because of the encouragement to attend without guarantees, which that's how life is. That's one of the things you might learn in college. At 18, political views for protests and substantial debt investment in an unknown quantity are real things. They're real concerns. They don't always work out the way you plan. Now, the question is, what do you do about that? What do you do next? Not all jobs or job roles or other pursuits require a college degree. So, as I mentioned, the federal government is rolling back some of the requirements. They're asking questions and maybe removing more often the requirement that there is a college degree. It's often a reasonable decision. Specifying job requirements, I've seen this happen, so I'm not making this up. Someone will write a job description, especially if they were a manager who didn't really know what the person was doing in the first place. And they will say, oh, so-and-so is leaving, or we have to grow our department, so I need to add some people. Okay, well, who do we have? We have 3 PhDs and 2 masters. Okay, so you got to have at least a master's, PhD preferred. Like, wait a minute. Their PhDs are in agriculture and history, and we're doing cybersecurity. So it doesn't always make sense to require a degree, especially if it's not going to be used or if it's not applicable, et cetera. So oftentimes, my point was, the people that write job descriptions sometimes look at what they had, what the person who was sitting in this chair, like, oh, I think they went to Harvard, so it must be a Harvard. And if you ever watch Suits, the legal, whatever, dramedy, has a princess on the rolls. Had to go to Harvard, right? This firm would only hire Harvard graduates. Okay, that's fine. But if you only hire people that have achieved a certain higher education level without knowing why you're requiring that, then you probably lose. You probably lose out on a lot of qualified candidates. So the federal government is going to opt for skills over credits, accreditation. So if you didn't go to college, but I sometimes tell people, there was a time when the Wright Flyer, Orville and Wilbur, they didn't have pilot's license. There was no such thing. So there is always room for people who acquire skills, abilities, knowledge, insights based on other means, sometimes very practical. There was always a joke going around that some companies were requiring 10 years of a particular programming language. And it's like, well, this programming language was literally invented 5 years ago. So according to this, the person that invented the language, Larry Wall, Guido Van Nostrand? No, that's a classmate. What's Guido's last name? Anyway, Python. Larry Wall, Perl, Kerrigan and Ritchie happen to be professors already, so that's fine. But the point is, the person that invented the language in this case wouldn't have been able to get the job because not enough years. He's like, I hasn't been around this long. I couldn't even get this job. So, and that happens all the time. So the connection of education with jobs is fraught with issues for various reasons. I would argue that the reason you go to college is not necessarily the job. You can argue with this. If you're going to med school to be a doctor, a surgeon, whatever, that's a sort of a special case. But if you go to college feeling like you could go to college, you go to med school, you're going to be a surgeon. And then somewhere along the way, you're like, oh, I can work at a medical devices company. I'm more interested in the application of technology for mitigating, various morbidities that I don't have to be in a operating room, in a surgical theater. I could be designing these products, working with patients, so you can apply your knowledge in different ways. So it's not always a given that a particular educational path results in a particular job. And when you realize that, you will be less surprised when the job market has shifted, the requirements have changed. You didn't learn enough AI. Well, they didn't have that 4 years ago when I got into college. I didn't think about it. Well, things change. The thing you should learn in college, the thing you should learn in any of your higher education programs, whether it's college or vocational or any programs, two things. One, you should learn how to deal with the circumstances at hand. So things didn't go as planned. Things are not working out the way I thought they were. I prepared for this and we're that. Freshman year, I was thinking I was going to be an Air Force pilot. By senior year, I'm going to be working in Silicon Valley. Great. Totally different. But you should be willing and able to, and even possibly excited by the prospect of things not going the way you thought they would. But two, even more important, the result of your higher education, whether it's any program, college, vocational, whether it's community college, all the way to like a PhD, double PhD, get a double PhD. Why not? The take home, you should learn how to make yourself more adaptable to circumstances, to information, to data. Learn how to learn and don't stop doing that. So when you finish your higher education, you've left high school, you've been surrounded by people who are required to be there. I think in Phoenix, you were required to attend 180 days per school year. That's based on county, school district, probably a federal mandate for funding or whatever. However that worked out, 180 days of attendance with something like, because 180 days, holidays, winter break, all these breaks and everything. So they calculated out 180 days of attendance. You would get a certain number of sick days. And after that, you would be at risk of not being able to finish a particular school year because you didn't attend enough days. So they would somehow account for, you did the work at home, et cetera. So you're required to be there. College, you can spend all the tuition you want and never go to class ever. I've known people like this. I was halfway there. I knew someone who barely attended class, but yet was a genius. Could probably take the classes take the tests, test out of classes. Brilliant. Right? So you're going to encounter all these types of people who want to be there or who want to achieve certain things. Not necessarily, I must attend 180 days of school. So the value proposition then, not, oh, I'm going to get a job doing this thing when I get out. It should be, I'm going to know how to adapt to change. It could be in my chosen job field or it could be total shift. aside from the fact that you're going to meet interesting people, possibly in the same or similar fields, or who face similar challenges when you're graduating, etc. But the most important thing is you set yourself up for what I like to call lifelong learning. You should finish college not thinking that you are done, but that you have only just begun. That's why commencement is a college graduation ceremony. Commencement, you are beginning. You could argue it's the beginning of the beginning. You could say it's the end of the beginning. I'll leave that to you and your Churchillian familiarities. The bottom line, though, is you should finish college or any of your... So again, I'm looking through the college lens. Those are the glasses I'm wearing. But when you finish your compulsory education in the U.S., it's K through 12. When you choose to advance your education in other ways, and you can do this anytime. People who tell you, oh, if you take a gap year, then it's going to... If you learn something during that gap year, that should count to me. And by the way, that's why my resume has... my resume is more of a CV, a curriculum vitae. Curriculum vitae is something like a background. If you're going to be a professor and you publish a paper, your curriculum vitae is all of your, not only your education and work experience, but your papers, your research projects, patents, etc. It's your full, it is literally a view of your life. So I have more of a CV. I think resumes, oh, you have to change your resume to suit the job description. Well, to me, if you do it right, things you've learned throughout your, not only your compulsory education, but your workaday life during that time, high school jobs, etc. Things you learn in college, things you learn in postgraduate. You go on and get advanced degrees. You take vocation. By the way, you can graduate from college and then still go take a vocational program. You could go get a pilot's license. That's sort of similar, right? Nobody says, oh, sorry, you already finished college. You can't. It's too late to go get a pilot's license. There are other things to measure. But so this notion that like I will go to college and then I will be done and I will get a job. Oh, I'm not going to get a job doing that. Now what do I do? One of the classes I took was the Theories of the Good Life. Professor Smith at Claremont McKenna College. You had to be a senior, and it was a limited class size. So you had to sign up, and luckily myself and three other mutters were in. We would sit in the back corner. One of the reading assignments was The Death of Ivan Illig. Death of Ivan Illig. You should check it out. I'll leave it there. So the mutters, we got to class after doing the reading, and we literally all looked at each other and said, that was depressing. It will lead you to question, why did I choose to go to this school and pursue this degree or program, etc. Because I wanted to, or because it was what I thought other people wanted me to do and I agreed, etc. Right? So there's always a lot to think about, but Theories of the Good Life is really about what you want and how you plan to get there. It was a good class. It was one I'm glad I took it. There was a reason it was for seniors. It was to look back. A freshman view, a freshman or a first-year student, whatever they call that, you have a very different view of not only your education as you have experienced it, but what it will mean tomorrow and into the future. Between that first year and the final year of a 4-year program, drastically different. A little bit more reality has crept in. And even then, only the beginning, the commencement. Your friends and acquaintances who decided not to go or to complete a college degree. Oh, sorry, I moved to the wrong bullet item. I will get to that in a moment. The thing I wanted to talk about was my own college, Harvey Mudd College. I participated in the Alumni Association Board of Governors. I was a guest. They're growing, or they're replacing, or whatever. It's elections, and I was. There was a call for anyone interested. I said, it's been 30 years. I should see how I can participate. Took part in the meeting. Now, I said Harvey Mudd College has changed quite a bit in the last 31 years since I graduated, May of 1993. So I graduated 31 years ago, I think on the 14th, May 14th, I think. Today's May 9th. So I attended this meeting. Now, the two topics that I will call out as indicators, harbingers. And by the way, I will say Professor King, who I mentioned with the water trees, I did some work sort of with him. I'm going to say it was 2008, 2007. He was looking at power usage, residential, or in the case of on campus during the dorms, he was building devices that would go along with smart meters for a resident, a person in the home, or a residence, to be able to measure their power usage and then to make adjustments. So a whole system of power adjust. So basically power management as you would find on a phone or a computer or a laptop, but for a home. So interestingly, his background was material science, but he was getting into electrical engineering. So it was kind of interesting. So we had some stuff bouncing around for a while, and he said, man, Harvey Mudd College has really changed for the worse. The value of your education is going down when they let just anybody in, when they start adding. So Harvey Mudd used to be very strictly, like I said, 1/3 core, which was science, 1/3 your major. So you could take the chemistry core, but then you go on to be a chemistry major. So you take a lot more chemistry. If you're an engineer, you would take your chemistry core and you would go on to be, I took systems and I took systems, communications, mechanical materials, electrical, communications, which is like satellite and information transmission, Shannon's law, more systems. So we're required to take 1 unit of systems engineering as a core. So that was your taste of engineering, Laplace transforms and transfer functions and so on. So 1 additional year of what we called big systems. So yeah, big systems, electrical, chemical, materials, mechanical, communications, computers. And then I took advanced microprocessors. We built a robot. And I took 2 years of clinic, which were real world projects. So my third of my major was pretty intense. I always took 18 units every semester, which was crazy. That was more important to me than good grades. And I can show you the proof of that if you want. But the take home, the Harvey Mudd College curriculum and program and the people attending at the time were fairly intensely STEM oriented. But because maybe the times have changed or whatnot, the good news, there were more women participating. Our graduating class had 16 women. For the longest time, I thought it was 13, but I think it was really 16. There was a time when I could name them all. I probably still could if I really tried. So that's a bad sign. So more women have participated in the programs and have graduated. There are more. All of the department heads, I believe, are women now, so they're really balancing. And this was a very organic effort. They didn't adjust their attendance or admission requirements, as far as I'm aware. What they did do is allow more people in general, and they added humanities degrees. So now you could go to Harvey Mudd College, but you could major in a liberal arts field. So Harvey Mudd was moving away, or I guess has moved away from a very strictly STEM-oriented platform. And in Professor King's view, this was devaluing the education that we had received. That may be true. So I have found in my travels that people to this day do not know what Harvey Mudd College is. If I say MIT, Caltech, Harvey Mudd, you will see the faces go, What's that third one? So I attended this meeting, and they were talking. There was a person presenting a project that they've been working on to try to help students graduating get jobs. Okay. By the way, Karen McAndrew in the Career Development Center at Harvey Mudd during my time there was recognized around the world as someone who did well beyond what any one person should have done to help anyone get a job. But she recognized the value of the educated and used her powers of connection and communication to enable anyone looking for a job to find a person who could give them one. And she kept very close connection to alum who were in a position to hire. And there was always opportunity to engage with the alum to learn about, so like I was saying earlier, you should talk to people who have graduated recently and to people who graduated longer ago, a long time, 31 years ago, perhaps. So I attended this meeting. They say we're working on how to help upcoming, soon to be, and recent grads connect with job market. So I said, is anyone considering, and there have been some fairly successful graduates from Harvey Mudd College, present company excluded. Now, there have been people who have done very interesting things, who have become sort of B-list celebrities, perhaps. The famous one when I was in school, Pinky Nelson, actual astronaut on the space shuttle. Okay, great. I mean, that is great. There have been Glowforge, the founder of Glowforge, if you're into 3D printing or laser cutting. Glowforge founder, Harvey Mudd graduate. There are more stories like this. So I said, I think there really needs to be an effort put into connecting the success stories. Could be research, could be published papers, could be people who have started their own companies, who have achieved things, patents and otherwise. There used to be a document called the Green Sheet that was published on campus, and there was some other magazine published for alum and other people interested to see what was going on. But it was mostly campus-centric, and every once in a while they would have a section on like, oh, so-and-so from class of 98 had a child, and Alice and Bob from class of 97 and 96 got married, whatever. It was very human stories, but it really didn't emphasize the achievements that were coupled in some way with a Harvey Mudd education. So I said, I have encountered people who are familiar with Harvey Mudd. My travels with Intel, the Arduino alliances with different companies, people who knew Arduino, and you went to Harvey Mudd? Oh, yes. When I moved to Vegas after a house fire, there were people here who were familiar with Harvey Mudd. They were familiar with Intel for sure. There was an article published at the time, the enabling elements of Silicon Valley's success. There were several, and they named 3 educational institutions: Stanford, Berkeley, Harvey Mudd College. And even I was surprised at that. So this was back in the 90s, right? Early, mid-90s. So I got to Silicon Valley in 93 after I graduated and had a very educational and interesting time. So when I saw this and I said, wow, I would not have thought that because there are too few Mudd graduates. But, Mudd is a very potent program at the time it was. So I said, this was an effective way, because people in Vegas here were like, oh, I saw that article, or I would point them to it sometimes, a little humble brag. Why did you move to Vegas? You moved here from Silicon Valley. And I'm like, well, I work for Intel. I moved here from Silicon Valley. I went to one of the 3 schools that made Silicon Valley happen. What can I do for you? That kind of thing. So it was an interesting time. But my point during this meeting, it was a Zoom call. I said, I really think there would be value in promoting the value proposition of bringing Harvey Mudd graduates into your endeavors, whether it's your startup, your existing company, your research project, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't think people are recognizing especially the longer term, right? Recent graduates, okay, you're still new. You're going to be on the junior level or below, right? Entry level, ramping up, learning. But there are achievements that are happening year over year. And this is the caliber of people. So the response was, okay, thanks for the feedback. We moved on to another topic now. One of the members of the Alumni Association Board of Governors is both a Harvey Mudd graduate, I want to say class of 61, and a professor. I think he's actually recently retired, so he probably has an office with no classes. VH, chemistry. I won't call him out too severely, but if you know who he is, you know who he is. So he moved after I said all these things. I said, I've been to MIT, I've been to Italy and other, Europe, and people are familiar in some cases. They're familiar with Harvey Mudd. Yeah, that's a good school. I've known a couple people, and they're very, so there's always a good reputation if that connection is made. So I said there really needs to be more proaction to make this more apparent. You shouldn't have to run into a Mudder somewhere randomly and say, oh, wow, that person was pretty smart. Harvey Mudd needs a reputation to precede itself as Caltech and MIT's reputations do them. That's a tough hill, but a hill to climb nonetheless. So after my pitch, and I was patted on the head, thanks for your feedback. So VH says, I think the campus needs a faculty lounge, a place where the faculty can go and have conversations, have a coffee and a donut, and socialize and talk amongst themselves. And I was standing a standing desk. I was like, what is going on here? There are thousands of Harvey Mudd graduates now at this point floating around the world, and this guy is one of them. And he's like, we need a place for donuts. I'm like, oh my goodness, I am wasting my time here. So your college, the people that you went to college with are one thing. The college itself, if you put too much credence in the value of the college, the buildings, the faculty, you may have some standouts. You're like, oh, that particular person played an instrumental role. They wrote me a really good rec. We had our professor for advanced microPs, Dusan Petronovich, great guy. I've reached out to him over the years once or twice. I don't know if he would ever respond to anything. I think he's moved on to other things, but he was a really interesting professor. He was very hands off. So we really drove our own. Our project was completely self-driven. My colleague, friend, and lab partner in this case, Bill, we had a great time, very educational. Parts of what I learned during that largely self-directed class, I use to this day. So once again, underscoring the value of an education that you choose to pursue. That's basically the value proposition of any post K-12 education pursuit, is that you want to do it, which automatically makes it more valuable to you. Hopefully you realize that. So Harvey Mudd, my feedback after that Board of Governors meeting was, I will not be pursuing the voting and election process to participate. I think I see the problem, which is unfortunate. That's too bad. So don't invest too much in the institution, but invest not only in yourself, but in the tools you acquire and the people around you who also acquire those tools. And eventually either you learned how to collaborate with them then, or you will know a little bit better how to collaborate with them in the future. And that's how you do your job networking. And, you're looking for a co-founder or something. Today, if I was looking for a co-founder of a startup and an opportunity to work with a Mudd graduate from the early 2000s came along, I think that would be very interesting. Would I co-found a company with a graduate of 2022? Probably not. They would be a person I would bring on to work with, but I think there is a tremendous amount. Now, this does not mean that if you are a recent college grad or even a high school student or even younger, that you shouldn't be entrepreneurial. Go for it. Do it. But for myself, based on what I've learned, what I know, etc., I would go for a little bit of worldliness, but I would absolutely not devalue a person who's more recently graduated. I think the school itself has changed quite a bit, but I would look for those markers of muddness. If you know, you know. So if you don't, you, from wherever you spent your time, you would probably spot a fellow alum and you'd have common experiences and so on. So let us now speak of the real considerations when pondering post-grade 12. You will not be the next Bill Gates. You will not. You will not be the next Mark Zuckerberg. Nope, not going to happen. People who drop out of college or skip it entirely and then go on to be among the richest in the world are a rare exception and a testament to right place, right time. Just because the guy in front, or the person in front of you, bought a lottery ticket and won does not mean you should always go back and stand behind that same person and buy the lottery ticket. Things work out in strange ways. Clearly, Gates and Zuckerberg had something, but they were in the right place, the right time. Things worked out. You have to have a certain amount of cutthroat attitude. You have to have a certain amount of opportunistic recognition of that opportunity, but you have to be aware, you have to have it, be aware of it, be able to take advantage of it. These things don't all align for everybody. So you simply cannot bank on, I'm going to do what they did. You probably are not, unless you do. And then when it actually happens, then you can call me and say, ha, and I will not be staying awake for that phone call. Your friends and acquaintances who decided not to go to or complete college are not you. Whenever you hear, I'm self-taught, I didn't need to go to the college, I didn't want to do that whole thing. And I've heard that from people here in Vegas who do some sort of technical something or other. But you really need to delve into those details, or more simply, realize that your situation is almost certainly different, even if it seems similar. Like, it could be a person you are in high school with, and then 5 years later, you went to college and they didn't, and they're doing better than you, better, quote unquote, whatever that means. Oh, I didn't need to go to college. I was self-taught. Okay. I have collaborated on things with people who are self-taught. One named Damon. Damon was brilliant. Damon was writing code circles around more experienced coders when he was very young. That works out that way sometimes. So he was very talented, a fairly normal, reasonably well-adjusted person. So good, self-taught. Great. Didn't have to go to college to acquire these skills. He acquired them very practically. So what he ended up doing was learning how to learn and then building on those skills practically by writing code, by sitting in front of a computer. So he got very good at those things. Does that mean he would be in fact, one day he said, I asked him a question about a hardware element. He said, I don't know anything about hardware. Okay. So you must realize that a self-taught person will often explore areas of interest, even if the areas that are essential, the underpinnings, the basis, the foundational, the first principles, maybe those were not interesting, so you don't delve into those. Nowadays, you have people learning, and I'm leaning towards tech because that's me. You have people learning JavaScript, and that's all you need to know. You're like, wow, there's like 70 years of computer and more if you count, Pascal, and so there's a lot of history that we should be examining. There's a lot of knowledge that you can benefit from. Well, no, I don't want to learn that. But then when they encounter, and this is my experience with some other self-taught people, I'm good. I know enough. But then they don't know the thing that they needed to know to solve the problem at hand. So when I've sat with other people, who I will not name, I learned this myself. I was self-taught. My school didn't offer, so I did this myself, et cetera, et cetera. I've done that. I learned Pascal with a blind person. I've said this story before. So I didn't take a class in Pascal when I learned Pascal, which is an old programming language. It happens that the first semester at Harvey Mudd, CS5 was Pascal, unfortunately. But the outcome of CS5 was not to be a proficient Pascal programmer. It was a computer science class. The outcome was supposed to be understanding how writing compiled code for a computer worked. So going on to learn C and whatnot. C, by the way, also self-taught. But I had learned how to program and how computers worked long before that. And I still benefited from the college element and learning in classrooms with actual professors about computer science and computer engineering and so on. So the value proposition to someone who wants to be self-taught is not instead of, it's, I think, in addition to, like, I already knew how to do, 60%. I had no idea about that other 40%, that it was actually another 100%, because I didn't take math either. Now, the point is that if you allow yourself to become a lifelong learner, if you don't treat it as a one and done, then you might view college as the beginning. You might view self-taught and then, I could actually take a few classes in particular areas. I might want to learn how cache systems work. What is the messy protocol? Mutual, exclusive, shared, invalid. What is CC-NUMA, cache coherent non-uniform memory architecture? What does that do for me? How is that going to apply to these massive computer networks that do all sorts of networked GPUs to accelerate neural network training for AI? What is the descent gradient? All these things that you will learn about. But if you learn how to learn, then you will find yourself saying, I wonder what the benefit is of having this cache model versus the other. Why does a streaming processor that does massively accelerated multiply and accumulate operations, why is that better than a general purpose? These are the sorts of things you will learn that you didn't know that you didn't know. So I will save you from a quote from Rumsfeld, the only useful thing he's ever said. So when people say, I didn't need to go to college, I didn't need to, I didn't want to, look at how I've turned out, that's not you, that's them. and consider what you actually want to achieve, what sorts of tools you're looking for, what you hope to come away with. Realize choice is, it comes down to what you do with your own results. So that's your choice. Whatever your choice is. Whatever your choice is, it still comes down to what you do with your own results. So you may choose to go to college, but then change your mind. You may learn in the first year that what you really should be doing, and that's totally fine. Pivoting is good. Pivoting is how you don't allow the notion of sunk cost and opportunity cost to get in your way. You're like, what I've learned thus far has taught me that I need to do this other thing in a different way. Totally legal, totally valid. Do it. Jobs might find you, especially if you were still alive. But like being the next Bill Gates, that is not something to bank on. You cannot always count on someone knocking on your door. If you're in the 1% of the 1% of the scholarly overachievers who becomes infamous for, some algorithm or some method or some scientific research that went well, you don't want to be the next Theranos, but you might have found something. And guess what? You might have found that in a lab on a college campus. You never know. So you got to roll with it. And that's a real consideration. What do you want to get out of what you pursue, especially in your early years when you have the time to pivot and make change, and when so few things are held against you? So how can we make it better? What works, what doesn't, and what can we do about it? That's the whole point of this whole FFS talk thing. My view, education needs to improve. And with AI looming, artificial intelligence, people speak of artificial general intelligence. Large language models are, copy or auto-suggest on steroids. Autofill, auto-suggest, one of those. So large language models are certainly interesting. They are not magic. They are not the future. They're certainly a step along the way. Interesting times. There's the GPT-2 rumor floating around that they've come huge long ways. They've made massive strides in mathematical reasoning and so on, but you always have to ask what's going on behind that curtain. But huge questions about what we do and how we do it with AI. It could be a tool, could be a partner, like you're like a coworker almost. Like, hey, I'm not going to say the name of the Amazon product. Can you find me some research materials for my next podcast? It's going to be about widgets and Alice and Bob. And okay, so as a partner in crime, as a collaborator on a project and so on, that might be it. It might be a tool that you use to, make this text more interesting, try to simplify it, replace words to make it a basic English text instead of using too much crazy vocabulary, et cetera, et cetera. Or is artificial intelligence going to be a competitor? Is it going to take your job? Which is curious. I know that people are claiming that they're replacing people with AI. I know companies are having layoffs. Oh, we're getting benefit from AI. I don't think that will be true. I don't think that it is true, genuinely true, and I don't think it will be true in the near term. A couple more years, we'll see. But got to be ready. Got to be ready for what's going to coming down the pike, I think is the expression. So these questions always should be always open for consideration, every day, forever. Always be wondering, what technological advancement is going to come along tomorrow that will make my job or my future less or completely irrelevant? We must, as a society, and perhaps even as a form of life on the planet, appreciate, encourage, and celebrate lifelong learning. You should never stop learning. You should always be willing to look it up. You should always be willing to find out if what Joe Rogan is saying has any truth whatsoever. You should not believe one side because it aligns with your political ideology. You should seek out alternative sources, and you should understand what you're reading if you choose to do your own research. You have to be wary of when a person who's expert in one field decides to opine on another, and you cannot simply assign the same level of expertise. And everybody's favorite astrophysicist, Neil deGrasse Tyson, is guilty of this on many occasions. You're an astrophysicist. Your views on various other topics are not coming from the same expertise level and same place as your level of expertise in astrophysics. So if you're going to talk about vaccinations, you may have qualifications when it comes to reading research papers. You know how error bars work. You know what it means to have a survey, a population survey and sampling. And you have some notion of that from maybe your own research, but you're not a virologist. You're not an you're not an epidemiologist. You're not an immunologist. You're not a medical doctor. Astrophysics. It's very different. So we need to understand where we are learning things from, who we are self-teaching ourselves from, what information we are accepting as fact, and so on. We need to appreciate the fact that people do and can, do want to and can continue learning, and this should be always encouraged. There should always be a way to validate what you think you've learned or what you understand without rebuke. If someone comes away thinking, now here's the thing, I think this particular thing is a better way to do something to achieve this result, whatever it is. And someone else says, actually, I've tried that and I learned this, and this is actually a little bit better. And this person could say, oh, now, does that person get thrown off a bridge, or do they get shunned from? No. They said, here's a thing I've discovered. And someone else says, oh, I discovered that, but I also discovered a better way. When we have a collaborative learning experience, which I've suggested you get from going to college, when you work with people in collaborative like lab situations, laboratory research, collaborative projects, when you learn how to collaborate, you don't say, hey, you got the wrong answer. You're expelled. You're kicked off the island. That's very dramatic, but it's not productive. So someone who arrived at a suboptimal result is not dumb. Maybe they were 10 minutes away from getting to the next line. So valuing collaboration and learning more and continuing learning and that desire to learn should be paramount. There should never be a reason to say, meh, I've learned enough. And I am concerned that people believe that college is that. College is like a cartridge you plug into your game console of old, and then you're good. You don't have to do anything else. Yep, somebody else wrote the code for me. I'm all good. Like, well, no. This is the beginning. You have reached a point where you should be able to write your own code. You should be able to do your own things, and that means learning more and not stopping. So I think college or alternative, any voluntary education that you choose to pursue after your compulsory K through 12 window should be considered not another step in the job marketplace, although it often is, but really a step in the development of a mindset about personal skills development, interactions with others, teach and learn and collaborate. If you can teach, you know what they say, if you know something really, really well, you should be able to explain it to someone else or teach them. Find out if that's true. And perhaps the end of the beginning of a lifelong learning journey. Thank you, Churchill, again. Perhaps expectations need adjustment. I think they do. Now, you do run the risk of, there are some entrepreneurs, even in the Vegas area, that are 12, so barely high school age-ish, sort of. And they're entrepreneurial. Maybe they have a shop. Of course, their parents do the legal paperwork. But they have a shop, they're selling, they're designing, or they're creating things, or maybe they're writing code, they're selling apps. These things are, and this is not just Vegas, but, so you meet, here's the kid, here's the parent. This is all well and good. What happens next? Do we see a path for people to learn from that? Like, oh, I guess really anything is possible. Does that kid need to go to college? No, they already achieved all this. No, that kid should definitely go to college. Just imagine. Skip a few of the introductory classes, but just imagine the people that you will learn from, professors maybe, but your colleagues, the people you will meet that are not even colleagues. You're like, oh, you know what? I didn't even think about the astrophysical I'm trying to make it humorous, the astrophysical implications of this product. So people who are truly advanced may fit in even better in a college situation because the learning part is already kind of accounted for. You've done that part. Like, I know how to learn the things I needed to learn to accomplish the thing I wanted to accomplish. Now I'm going to learn the things I didn't learn, and I will accomplish yet more. We must have access to information about programs, outcomes, individual professors, other educators, trainers, and so on. Access to individuals who found value, and especially those who may not have found value in the program or programs we are looking at. So when you're doing when you're signing up or you're sending out your applications for your your safety school and your first choice on, why do you want to go to those places? Why do you want to participate? Why do you want to sign up for debt to participate in these programs? What's in it for you? And are you going to Harvard because of the name, or because the professor, the program, the graduates, the alum that you've communicated with? What's the value proposition for you? And how are you arriving at this decision? This analytical thinking is something you will learn in college, hopefully. So you're going to have to learn it before. And if nothing else, you'll learn, when am I ever going to use this? Oh, right now. We probably have more information about and spend more time considering whether we are going to upgrade our mobile phone, whether we should do it now, whether we should wait. Should we be concerned about TikTok? Well, I'm concerned about it because I watch a bunch of videos, or maybe I produce content and I somehow make money from that. That's what I'm worried about, rather than what it gets from us. Maybe TikTok, and by the way, TikTok is just as bad, maybe a little bit worse, as Instagram, as any Google, Android and Apple iOS. These are probably do you know evil? Don't be evil. Sorry, don't be evil. Yeah, those were famous last words. All of these platforms are awful. I think the TikTok quote unquote ban, I think the real way to do this was to force, transparency and disclosure. These technologies should be treated as though they are medical. They do have medical impact on humans, for better or often for worse. So the regulation for the sake of human safety should be the concern, not the geopolitics and whatnot. But people are more concerned about what they get or would not get, rather than what TikTok is taking, what other platforms are taking, how their opportunity cost is possibly your mental well-being for their profit. And we must always question and investigate these things. We should always have access to that information and so on. So without believing that reading an article or listening to a podcast is doing my own research. So you have to understand what it means to really get to the bottom of what is the, first of all, read the legislation about TikTok. Don't believe what you hear from either side of the aisle, whichever podcaster you're listening to, or whichever TikToker, I guess, TikTok channel. Is there a, I know there's book talk and all that. Is there a, would that be ban talk? Is there a whole collection of TikTokers giving their renditions of First Amendment protections that I don't understand? Yet without believing the reading, without believing the reading that these people don't do. So you do the reading, and but don't believe it just because you read one article. Do the reading, do the research, read the legislation. That was the point I was getting to. Actually read the legislation, read the article, read the study, read the research. Understand how you're forming your opinion. These are the sorts of skills you learn when you choose to learn, when you are done with your K through 12 or your other, wherever you are on the planet, whatever your educational requirements are. When you start to enter into I want to learn because I want to learn mode, then you should understand what doing my own research really means, and you should come away knowing how to learn, how to see what is doing where, who and what and how, where's the money going, who's taking advantage of whom, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. These are the results of taking a proactive interest, pursuing it, and coming to your own conclusions. And that is why I went to college, when the student becomes the teacher. And that is where I will leave it today. But I definitely am not a fan of the anti-college, the blanket statements along those lines. I am a fan of people doing what works for them, understanding how they know whatever they're doing works for them. Not, I'm self-taught, therefore I don't need to learn more. That is wrong thing, I think. But there are ways to do education. We are not necessarily doing them ideally. I'm a fan of flipped classroom. I've said this before other times, and I will say it again. So flipped classroom really is about directing your own learning, but then also coming together with others for social engagement to to sort of reinforce in a collaborative way how to apply what we've learned, how to correct some things that we got wrong, etc. So I think the way that we do this could change, but I think the notion that I can do it by myself, I don't need to learn from others, I don't need to test, I don't need to be tested for my knowledge. My joke is always, yeah, that's what my doctor always says. We don't need to go to college. So interesting time ahead. The protesters will learn some very interesting lessons. Hopefully the people that are judging them now will also later. It would be interesting to talk to them 5 years from now, see what they come away with. That is where I will end today's episode. Thank you so much, as always, for listening. Don't forget to visit buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo, coffee.com, ko-fi.com/DanHugo. Both of those are places where I will start pushing out some info about websites and publications and the startup that I'm doing for new media. That's not a great term, but new ways of sharing information at smart city scale. It's the beginning of the beginning, most definitely. But you can start there when websites are becoming available, when we jump on YouTube for some other stuff. Audio will continue. We'll see what happens. An embarrassment of riches before us. Thank you.